Do you believe in ghosts? What if I told you that some houses aren't just haunted? They're alive, and they're hungry. Tonight, we're venturing into the heart of Lagos, to a story that blurs the line between urban legend and chilling reality. This is the tale of the house on Opebi Road. For years, it stood as a dark stain on the city's vibrant landscape. A mansion wedged between modern buildings, decaying in plain sight. Its iron gates were rusted shut, its windows boarded up, and thick vines choked its walls like grasping fingers. Locals whispered stories about its original owners, a wealthy family who vanished into thin air decades ago. Some said they left, others spoke of a tragic accident, but the darkest rumors whispered of a curse. Despite the warnings, or perhaps because of them, four friends, Kemi, Tunde, Ife, and Chuka, found themselves drawn to its mystery. It was a running joke, a late-night dare that always hung in the air. Then, one Friday night, fueled by bravado and a bit too much liquid courage, they decided to do the unthinkable. They would break in. "It's just an old house," Tunde laughed, his voice echoing the group's reckless energy. "What's the worst that could happen?" Chuka, always the thrill-seeker, chimed in, "Let's make this a night we'll never forget." And so, under the cloak of darkness, they stood before the imposing gates. A shiver traced its way down Kemi's spine, but the excitement of her friends was contagious, drowning out her unease. With a groan of protest, the rusted gates swung open. Tunde, leading the charge, pushed them forward into the overgrown yard. The mansion loomed over them, a monstrous silhouette against the moonlit sky. "Let's just look around and leave, okay?" Kemi pleaded, her voice barely a whisper. The others agreed, their nervous laughter swallowed by the oppressive silence of the grounds. The grand front door, surprisingly, was unlocked. It creaked open, inviting them into a dusty, cavernous foyer. The air was thick and stale, heavy with the scent of decay, mildew, and something else. Something deeply unsettling. "All right, let's go deeper," Ife urged, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and exhilaration. "There's gotta be something interesting in here." They moved from room to room, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The furniture was shrouded in white sheets like ghostly figures, and torn, moth-eaten curtains danced in the faint drafts. It was as if the occupants had simply vanished mid-sentence, leaving everything behind. The silence was unnerving, a constant pressure on their ears. It was Kemi who found it. Tucked away behind a massive ornate mirror in the main hall, there was a small, almost hidden door. It was out of place, as if it had been added as an afterthought. Their curiosity now fully ignited, they pushed it open. It revealed a narrow staircase, spiraling down into absolute blackness. "This wasn't in any of the blueprints," Tunde said, a wide, reckless grin spreading across his face. "Who's going first?" A moment of hesitation passed through the group before Chuka, ever the daredevil, stepped up. "I'll go," he announced, his voice echoing in the stairwell. "It's just a basement." One by one, they descended, the wooden steps groaning under their weight. The temperature plummeted with each step. At the bottom, they found themselves in a cold, cramped room. The walls were lined with shelves groaning under the weight of old books, strange artifacts, and dusty, forgotten paintings. In the corner, leaning against the damp stone, was another mirror. It was large and old-fashioned, its surface cracked and grimy. "Look at this," Ife whispered, her voice trembling. "It's like something out of a horror movie." As they gathered around it, the air grew thick, almost suffocating. Kemi felt a strange pressure on her chest, an invisible weight pushing down on her, and then she heard it. A faint whisper, so quiet she thought she'd imagined it. It came again, clearer this time. A single chilling phrase. "Leave. Now." Her heart hammered against her ribs. "Did anyone hear that?" she asked, her voice shaking. The others just gave her nervous looks, trying to laugh it off. "It's just the wind, Kemi," Tunde said, though the fear in his own eyes betrayed his words. But the whisper wasn't done. It grew louder, more insistent, filling the small room. "Leave! Now! Or you will never leave." Suddenly the lights from their phones flickered and died, plunging them into darkness. A bone-deep cold swept through the room. As their eyes adjusted, they saw their own reflections in the cracked mirror, twisted and distorted. But they weren't alone. Behind them, in the reflection, shadowy figures began to form. They were pale and indistinct, their mouths open in silent, eternal screams. Eve shrieked and stumbled backward, but the figures in the mirror didn't vanish. They became clearer, their features taking shape. They were men, women, and children, dressed in tattered old-fashioned clothing, and they were moving closer. "Get out!" Kemi screamed, grabbing at her friends. "We need to leave, now!" It was too late. With a deafening boom, the door at the top of the stairs slammed shut. Panic exploded. They threw themselves against the door, pounding and shouting, but it was like hitting solid rock. A low, guttural growl vibrated through the stone walls around them, as if the house itself was waking up. The floor trembled violently. The whispers turned to howls. "You shouldn't have come!" With a sound like a gunshot, the mirror shattered. The spirits were no longer just reflections. They were in the room with them, cold, translucent, terrifying. They reached for the friends with desperate, clawing hands, their touch like ice. In the chaos, Kemi fell backward, crashing into a shelf. A pile of old books tumbled to the floor, revealing a small, leather-bound journal. She snatched it and frantically flipped through the brittle pages. They were filled with strange symbols and frantic handwriting. At the very end, scrawled in faded ink, was a warning. The house was built on a curse. The spirits of the family are trapped here. To free them, one must sacrifice the soul of an intruder. But beware, the curse is eternal. If the house chooses you, you'll never leave. "Guys!" Kemi screamed, holding up the journal. "This house is cursed. It needs a soul. One of us is going to be trapped here forever if we don't get out." Before anyone could react, the floor beneath Chuka crumbled away. With a final, desperate scream, he was swallowed by the darkness below. They rushed to the edge of the gaping hole, but he was gone. Terror gave way to pure, primal instinct. "We need to get out, now!" Tunda yelled. But the house was now a living nightmare. The walls pulsed, the shrieks grew louder, and every door and window slammed shut, sealing them in. The spirits swarmed them, pulling them, dragging them. Through the horrifying noise, they heard a faint, distant voice. Chuka's voice, calling for help from the abyss. Desperate, Kemi grabbed Tundi and Ife, dragging them towards a small, grimy window she'd spotted earlier. Tunda smashed the glass with a broken chair, and they scrambled out, cutting themselves on the jagged edges as they fell into the cool night air. Gasping, they looked back, and in the shattered window, they saw him. Chuka's silhouette, his eyes hollow pits of darkness, his mouth open in a silent, unending scream. Then the house fell silent. The next day, there was nothing. Where the cursed mansion on OPB Road had stood for nearly a century, there was just an empty plot of land, as if it had been erased from existence. Kemi, Tunda, and Ife never spoke of that night again, but they never forgot. They knew the house wasn't gone. It was just waiting, always waiting for the next curious souls to wander into its grasp. Thank you so much for joining me on this terrifying journey. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next dive into the unknown. Stay safe out there.